Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this press conference on the impact of EPA grant terminations on the health of Texans. My name is Jennifer Hedaya, and I'm the Executive Director at Air Alliance Houston. We are the longest running advocacy nonprofit in the Houston area, singularly focused on air quality. We believe that everyone has the right to breathe clean air. We are also a proud recipient of an Environmental and Climate Justice Community Change Grant from the Environmental Protection Agency, just one of many federal assistance programs currently targeted for elimination. These grants and the programs they support are vital for the health and resilience of Texas communities. We are not giving up on our funding or on the work, and we are here today to tell you why. Before we begin, some quick housekeeping. This session is being recorded. We ask that you remain on mute with your cameras off unless you are a speaker. We will take questions at the end after all of our speakers have finished their remarks. All of today's speakers are also available for interviews after the event, and I am now putting in the chat information for our media contact. So let's start with the numbers. 11 projects, 13 Texas counties, 67 million in taxpayer dollars. This is the scope of canceled grants in Texas so far. By May 1st, virtually all EPA grant programs with the words environmental justice in the title were notified of their termination, including our grant here at Air Alliance Houston. And more terminations may be coming. In fact, according to an analysis by Inside Climate News, one district in Texas stands to lose the fourth largest number and amount of environmental and climate grants in this round of terminations alone. This hits close to home. We chose today to tell this story because tomorrow is the deadline for all of these canceled grantees to dispute their cancellation. We plan to, and many others across Texas and across the country plan to as well. The need is far too great to give up now. To elaborate on the significance of these grants, it's my pleasure to welcome our very first speaker. He is uniquely qualified to set the stage for us today, as he was the architect of the EPA's environmental justice programming, a fellow hometown Houstonian, and the original executive director of Air Alliance Houston. Please welcome today, Matt Tejada.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and hello, folks. It's always good to be able to support Air Alliance Houston and to be able to speak to folks back home in Texas about these issues. So again, my name is Matthew Tejada. I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Environmental Health at the Natural Resources Defense Council but before joining NRDC in December of 2023, I spent close to 11 years running the Environmental Justice Program nationally for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It was a historic opportunity, not just in United States history, but in the history of world government in the last several years, to have the amount of resources we were given at EPA through congressional appropriations, both in baseline appropriations and through the Inflation Reduction Act, to provide resources directly to community organizations and their partners, local governments, academic institutions, tribal governments, and state governments, to actually solve some of the hardest, most intractable challenges facing communities across the United States. These are challenges of air pollution, of contaminated land, of persistent flooding and water quality, of the lack of resilience of so many communities that Houston knows quite well in facing ever increasing severity and frequency of climate-driven disasters. These are problems that are not going away. These are problems that have actually been in these communities for generations. They are some of the toughest challenges we face in the United States. They impact people's health. They foreshorten their lives. They minimize their economic prosperity. That has impacts for our entire society. The grants that we were able to design with these historic levels of funding, never before available to go directly to communities and their partners to actually fix these sorts of problems on the ground. We're going to solve these issues. We're going to empower communities and their partners to imagine solutions previously unthinkable because those sorts of resources weren't available, because the government had never made itself fit the need of communities on the ground. And that was such a big priority for us as we designed these programs, was to make sure that this money was going to be useful in the ways that communities and their partners need. Right. So if they had money for housing and they had money for renewable energy and they had some funds to fix some flooding problems, but they couldn't quite bring them all together to work in the actual community, these grants were going to provide that middle piece that could not just bring in 10 or $20 million to do a project, but to unlock the funding of all of these other projects and programs to actually be able to make solutions possible that have never before been able to really stitch together on the ground. Communities and community organizations like Air Alliance Houston put thousands of hours into developing those partnerships. And it's really important to understand every single one of these grants is predicated on strong local collaborative partnerships. These are not grants to incite conflict. These are not grants to send people running up into controversy. These are grants that actually are predicated on communities having established relationships and collaborative working partnerships with local government, with tribes, with states, with the private sector, because it takes that large of a partnership of all of those willing participants to come together around the community and its vision and actually install the solutions that can achieve the vision of that community. That's what these grants were unlocking. And these grants are being ripped out of people's hands right now for absolutely no good reason. We saw in testimony before Congress that the EPA cannot explain why it is eliminating these grants. They have no justification for it. It is absolutely contrary to the mission of EPA to protect public health. The new mission of EPA to support economic revitalization. These grants would do that in the places where economic development is the toughest to achieve. These grants would help unlock that sort of economic vitality, local investment, job creation, right? Driving those government resources into places where they typically do not penetrate. These grants were historic. And before they got the chance to start turning dirt, again, they're being taken out of people's hands. They're being ripped from the communities that so badly deserve and need these sorts of resources. It's the first time in my career that I have seen the government actually take shovel-ready projects and walk away. In every previous instance, in every other time when we are looking to actually make things better in this country, our government is desperate to find shovel-ready projects. It is one of the biggest challenges the government constantly faces. In this instance, we not only have shovel-ready projects, we have projects where the shovels were in the ground, turning dirt. These projects are already starting to happen in different parts of the country and in different communities in Texas, and they're being told to stop. They're not just being told to stop, they're being told, give the money back that you've already spent. It's preposterous. It's illegal. We are fighting against it, but we need folks at the local level and throughout Texas to understand that these are not controversial, right? These were designed based upon decades of experience of working with communities, providing grants to communities and their partners across the entire United States. And these were going to do something historic, actually make positive change happen in communities across the United States. And as you saw, across Texas, it's no secret, and it certainly wasn't surprising to me that the majority of these funds actually went to places like Texas, places that are typically conservative or red or whatever else people want to ascribe to them. Those are the places that typically have the communities with these toughest challenges, with the greatest needs and the greatest deserving of this sort of support. It's not surprising to me that so much of this went to places like Houston because there are so many things that need fixing. And instead of fixing them, instead of supporting communities and their partners to actually get out there on the ground and innovate solutions and come up with projects that match the needs of communities and do so in a way that supports those communities and drives economic stimulus, we're walking away from them. The government is not keeping its word. It is looking for every excuse it can to break its word. And we're here to make sure that they live up to their word. And I'm so proud of Air Alliance Houston for speaking up and speaking out about this and being a leader, as it always has been, in Houston, in Texas, and across the United States at showing exactly what can happen when communities work in partnerships, hold folks accountable, but are also true to actually finding solutions that make communities better. I'm very happy to talk to anybody who wants to after this or take any questions, but I'm going to stop there, Jen, and hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Matt. We're going to dig in now and focus on the project here on the Texas Gulf Coast and share those impacts. So let me share my screen back with everybody here. All right, bear with me, bear with me. Multitasking on technology. So our canceled grant was a collaboration of 5 environmental and climate justice community-based organizations working in 10 Texas counties, which you can see on the map, all the way from the Coastal Bend to the Golden Triangle. Our grant project was also unique. It was about giving people the opportunity to weigh in on the environmental decisions that directly affect them, namely the permitting, regulatory, and rulemaking decisions of our state agencies, which are supposed to protect people from pollution, but too often give priority instead to those who are doing the polluting. Our project, if it had not been canceled, was intended to shift those priorities. Using our unique airmail permit notification tool, a link to which Brenda is about to place in the chat, along with community organizing, community science, and community-based education, we aim to provide people with the tools, training, and access to become advocates for their environment and for their health. We know this approach works. Apologies, my computer is going a little slowly. We know this approach works because we have been using it to fill rooms at permit meetings and to fill inboxes with comments. We have slowed or stopped new concrete batch plants from being built in already overburdened neighborhoods. And we have triggered objections to federal operating permits by the EPA for some of the region's biggest polluters. More importantly, we have helped numerous community members in the Houston area to become vocal and engaged advocates for their health and for their environment. And we have 2 such community members here today to tell their advocacy stories. Our next two speakers are going to share with you what inspired them to become advocates, how they were activated by the science, by the tools, by the education, by the activities that this canceled project would have been able to scale out across the Texas Gulf Coast. So please join me in welcoming first Juliana Hernandez from Aldine, and then followed by Jessica Campos from Denver Harbor. Juliana, the floor is yours if you're ready.
Hello, can you all see me?
Yes, we can see and hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry, my computer's a little. Um, Hello, my name is Juliana Hernandez, and I'm a University of Houston public policy student, and I've always been interested in advocating for the best interests of for the best interests of the most vulnerables within our community. And it's also why I chose to become an advocate within my East Alding community. And through this, I last spring, I got to join a civic club, and this was my introduction into environmental justice because we were able to join a meeting with TCQ to address our concerns about a bad actor concrete batch plant within our neighborhood that kept extending their permit, even though this was detrimentally affecting the health of the community. And after this meeting, I felt like I had hit a dead end of sorts because I was still confused as to why it was possible or even allowed through Texas's laws. But despite my interest in environmental justice, it wasn't until I came to know Airlines Houston that I understood how these injustices can come to be and the best methods of addressing them. And through the community outreach and education work that Airlines provides, I got to better understand the permitting process and its intricacies, which helped get rid of the dead feeling that I had previously had about advocating for environmental justice for clean air within my community. And I would like to say that it wasn't just me who had felt hopeless about the future of clean air in Houston, but many other neighbors that I had known as well. And I actually got to see how many different community members around Houston felt inspired by the work done at Air Alliance and motivated by the education provided that allowed us to know that change is possible. And this is actually why I wanted to intern for airlines. I got the opportunity to intern last fall, and it truly helped change the course of my life as an advocate for my community because it allowed me to learn um, further about the intricacies of the permit process and different ways to oppose a permit for a bad actor within a community, especially if the location that's being chose is like right in the middle or right in the middle of a community and like right next to an elementary school where children could be playing. I actually got the opportunity to attend my first permit opposition hearing meeting with airlines, and at that meeting I was able to see the ways that airlines provided different legal expertise and data expertise to the community to help support them in their opposition. I feel like if it wasn't for the work done by airlines, the permit hearing process wouldn't have been as successful as it was because as community we have passion, and obviously we'd want to make sure that these bad actors are not so close within our community affecting the children and forcing them to breathe in particular matter. But it truly is the expertise and powerful momentum that airlines brings that helps elevate the community's voices and allows them to be better heard by all of the people involved in the permitting process. And I truly, to me, airlines has been a gift to me and my community. And I know that is true for the rest of the Houston community, especially since so many people in Houston don't have the time or the resources to really understand what's going on and the laws around them. Typically, because a lot of the communities in Houston are low income and have to always be at work. And when you're working two jobs and taking care of your kids, you don't have the time to look into what laws or what processes are causing or enabling the environmental injustices around you. So the funding cuts are not just devastating to airlines, but also to the communities they have saved, including my own, as I know that they have always been involved in pioneering us through combating harmful bad actor concrete batch plants or other bad actor parts of the industry. And I know that airlines has much more work to do within communities, and their current momentum has been a big factor in this success. And I hope that despite decisions made on the federal level, the advocacy of airlines and the community mobilization that they have had can still be made possible. And I would just like to say that they have truly inspired me and helped me become a better advocate for my community. And I know that it's true for other people that airlines has touched. And so I would just like to say that despite everything going on currently, airlines is a glimpse of hope into the future for a more equal environment for not just people who are interested in advocacy, but also like school children who can't really advocate for themselves, or elderly people who try to advocate for themselves but maybe don't have the time or the resources, yet are still being impacted by this decisions and at the federal level and the injustices within our environments. And yes, thank you so much for airlines for inviting me and for everything that you have taught me.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Jessica, the floor is yours to share your story now.
Can you, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. Hi. Okay, so I was gonna write a speech and I didn't have the time. I'm a mom. I'm not just a mom, I am a neighbor. I am a community organizer. I wake up every day worried about my kids, and their health and the air that we're breathing, right? So how I got involved in wanting to learn more was during the time we were fighting for education. Like it wasn't enough that we were fighting for all these other things, but we're also fighting for, education. But during this time, I had several moms that were contacting me about us not having a nurse in the school. And I started noticing that a lot of the moms were talking about their children having asthma and that they needed a nurse in order to provide the nurse with the asthma inhaler and permission to administer the inhaler in case of an emergency. So I noticed, I'm like, why is it that all of these moms have kids with asthma? And I started to dig in deeper, and I found out that our 77020 zip code has a very high rate or percentage of children with asthma. We also have a really large amount of children with cancer. Um, and at the same time, while I'm finding out about the air quality, I'm also finding out that there's a lot of children with rare skin diseases. My friend, at the same time this state takeover was happening, she had just given birth to a baby who had a rare skin disease. He looked like he had been a burnt victim all of his baby life. Like, you want to hold your baby, but you couldn't hold her baby because he looked like he had been burnt. He looked like he was melting. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with him. They couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. They did several treatments. Some treatments would work, and then it would just come right back. There's that case that really touched my heart and made me start to wonder where am I living? I moved to Denver Harbor because this is what I could afford, and now I'm wondering, like, did I make the right choice for my children? Because I now have a child that was born here in Denver Harbor, and I worry, like, what about her health? Could she potentially someday have asthma? You know, it was a personal wake up call for me, to see the baby and to hear all these kids with asthma. And another one, I was also a Girl Scout troop leader, and I have a child who had just struggled with cancer as well, who also lived in Denver Harbor. So all these things were like red flag, red flag. Denver Harbor, it's such a rich neighborhood. We have lots of elderly. My neighbor down the street, she's a big mentor to me. She really cares about our community. She's actually our civic club president, and she just found out last month that she has stage 3 cancer, and it's devastating. It's just all around me. It doesn't even matter if, I see her walking her dog every day, at least 5 times a day. Someone who should potentially be a healthy person is not. She has cancer and we didn't even know it. So these are types of things that are making me like, okay, what do I need to do? I mean, I can't move out of here because this is what I can afford. This is what my family can afford. Daily experiences. So like my daily experiences with these issues is like in the mornings, I go over like 4 railroad tracks. My kids are constantly late because I'm met by train after train. Then I'm driving my kid to her little school in Magnolia, Bezos Academy. As we're driving down navigation in Harrisburg, you see the big factories. And my 4-year-old is like, "Oh, look, mommy, look at the pretty cloud." No, she doesn't know that it's not a pretty cloud. It's full of chemicals that she's breathing in and that are harmful to her. So my call to action is, we need these. I'm just finding out about this EPA. I didn't even know that we were losing funding. So like I'm learning about this with this meeting. Um, and it's devastating to hear that we could potentially lose. Excuse me. We're already faced with so many things in our communities. A language barrier is number one for me. And people don't even know what's going on around them because of the language barrier. And we've got education going down the drain and our kids' health. Like, is this the future that our kids have? Like, I feel like our kids deserve fresh air, clean water, a good education. I urge them to change this, to reverse whatever is going on, and make the right decisions to keep funding for EPA, so that testing can be done, and we can get the right help in our communities. I'm sorry.
Please don't apologize, Jessica. Thank you so much for sharing that story. I know we are feeling those feelings with you and why we are continuing to fight for these programs and do this work. Thank you for sharing your story. Next up, I would like everyone to hear from 3 of the partners on the Texas Gulf Coast project that has been canceled. I will welcome each of them in turn to turn on their video and share their perspective. First, we have Dr. Stefania Tomaskovic.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stefania Tomaskovic, and I'm the director of CEER, CEER. We are the Coalition for Environment, Equity, and Resilience. And our mission is to raise awareness of the connections between pollution, place, and the public's health. Because like Jessica said, everyone deserves clean air and clean water. And there's nothing controversial about that. And I have been just so proud of our work together with our partners. Air Alliance Houston has been just an incredible partner in this work. And I just really thank Jen and her organization for their leadership. So CEER has partnered with Air Alliance Houston on this particular community change grant with the express intent of increasing transparency. So our role in this work would have supported CEER's Regional Resilience Campaign, which supports a number of counties outside of Harris County. And this work would have really supported increasing awareness of environmental decision-making processes and working with people in communities impacted by pollution to really understand how projects would impact them and their neighborhoods and how they can get involved in the decision-making process. From my perspective, everyone has a right to know what kinds of industries are in their neighborhoods, what kinds of pollution their families are exposed to, and that right to know really, I think, centers in on exactly what Jessica was sharing about her neighborhood, her community. Wouldn't you want to know if a new industrial facility was popping up in your community? Don't you think that if your family was going to be exposed to harmful pollution that could trigger asthma attacks or caused cancer, wouldn't you want to know about that? And I think even more, wouldn't you want to have some kind of say in that facility, whether or not that facility would be built, how it was sited, what kind of protections would be in place for the community? I think these are all incredibly important concerns that parents, families, children, the elderly, all the vulnerable members of a community would want to know and would want to be prepared for, because at the end of the day, we're all impacted by pollution. SEER was founded in the wake of Hurricane Harvey, and many of us remember Harvey and the devastation it caused to homes, people's homes being flooded, people having to be rescued by neighbors. And I really appreciate how much love and support neighbors showed each other during that time. But what a lot of people don't know is that during Hurricane Harvey, millions of pounds of pollution were released into our air, into our soils, into our waterways. And like Matt said, these disasters are going to keep happening. So we need to find mechanisms. We need to find strategies and solutions that help protect people, that help protect communities, and help reduce and eliminate pollution. We need to make sure that we put in place programs that help prevent disasters like that from happening again. Communities deserve to understand their risk. They deserve to know if they're in harm's way. And people also deserve to have a say in what happens in their neighborhoods. So funding for this important program and others across the state would serve to protect the health and the well-being of Texas families. So today I am calling upon our elected officials and our federal government to reinstate this funding. It is really vital to protect the health and the well-being of Texans. Thank you all.
Thank you, Stefania. Next up, we have Rhiannon Scott, who will be sharing her perspective from the area of Corpus Christi, known as the Coastal Bend.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Jennifer. As she said, I am Rhiannon Scott. I'm the Executive Director for Coastal Watch Association. We're located in Ingleside, Texas, which is probably a good 10, 20 miles from Corpus Christi, just over the bridge. We are a nonprofit organization that for 9 years has worked tirelessly to safeguard the health and safety and resilience of our coastal ecosystems and communities within the Coastal Bend. I'm here to speak along with our partners about the setback of the EPA grant being terminated for us. The recent termination that supported significant portion of our work has left us with a lack of resources for our community, unfortunately. This grant wasn't just a budget line for us. It was a backbone to a lot of critical programs. It supported our air quality monitor efforts that allowed us to collect and analyze and share data with the public and health agencies, local governments, and the community. It funded education and outreach programs that empowered citizens and the community to speak out against industrial pollution and the effects that it's having within the community. It had helped us expand our resources and combat the effects of the industrial pollution and protect the health and welfare of the community. As we've heard from Jessica and Juliana, it really is affecting the health of not just those in the vicinity, but the children. You're hearing about asthma, how many kids are having asthma, cancer rising. These are serious health risks that we need to inform our community about and the industries that are contributing to this. The termination of funding has forced us to make incredible, difficult decisions. We've had to cut back in our community outreach programs. We've had to alter our air monitoring. We've had to halt hiring to get out into the community to provide that information to help them speak out against these permits. It is a vital part of our mission is to educate the community on the effects of industrial pollution. And we're no longer able to do that because of this lack of funding. Again, it's not just budget cuts. It's a representation of a loss of capacity, a loss of expertise, and the community trust that we have built over the years. We have known to help educate and give them the resources needed. We've had to shift our priorities from environmental protection to more of a reactive instead of proactive. The challenges that we're facing on our coasts, the pollution and climate change, the habitat degradation are growing, and they're complex and they're urgent day by day. And now we don't have the funding needed to combat these things. We actually are calling on our state partners, federal partners, donors, foundations to help us get all of the funding back to fight. We do need the support. We're with Air Alliance and our partners. We are asking that we fight this and help our community more. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhiannon. And last but certainly not least, I want to invite our partner, Dr. Margaret Cook, to come online and share her perspectives. Thank you, Dr. Cook.
Thank you for having me. Hello, Margaret Cook. I'm the Vice President for Water and Community Resilience at HARC, or the Houston Advanced Research Center. HARC is a sustainability-focused nonprofit based in the greater Houston area. We are a non-advocacy organization, and we apply science to drive energy, air, water, and resilience solutions for a sustainable and equitable future. We drive these solutions alongside partner organizations like Air Alliance Houston, SEER, Coastal Watch, and CETA. HARC was the statutory partner on this Airmail Gulf Coast project, providing technical expertise, program evaluation, and administrative support. And we were also a partner on another community change grant in Waco. Our primary contributions to this Gulf Coast project would have included leading project evaluation to measure and verify our partners' community impact, and conduct air quality modeling to assess environmental harms in partnership with those monitoring efforts that Coastal Watch mentioned. The aim of our data analysis was to help people understand the environmental impacts of local pollution sources and help them make informed decisions based on science. HARC also would have helped with project deliverables, support policy brief creation, foster collaboration among partners, and build capacity for community engagement and environmental decision-making. Community change grants across Texas and across the United States filled a deep need for communities. HARC knows this very well because we supported 16 communities across Texas, community coalitions across Texas, in developing their own grant proposals. Each of these communities had genuine big needs. These communities spent a considerable amount of time and resources demonstrating these needs through the EPA proposal process, with a handful of these programs being awarded EPA funding in Texas. That means this award was had a very quality proposal, and it was very important to the community. It had to rate higher than all of these other awards that, again, had big, genuine needs. The removal of the $67 million in awarded infrastructure funds will be a huge loss to each of these communities in Texas, including the valuable environmental education and transparency for decision-making that we've mentioned throughout this conference, as well as much needed infrastructure to address flooding, power outages, housing insecurity, local jobs and job training, and other concerns that Texans know very well. These grants were going to bring important economic investment in these very underinvested communities across Texas. So thank you to Air Alliance for leading this effort to educate on air quality, as well as the huge impact that these funds could have had in building much needed solutions for Texas. Thank you.
I am re-inspired for this work from hearing from all of our speakers, and I want you to leave with some inspiration as well in regards to what we do now and where we go from here. As I mentioned, tomorrow is the deadline for canceled EPA grantees to dispute their cancellation. In the meantime, we all continue to find ways to maintain these vital activities despite the lack of funds. But there are things that all of you can do as well. So, to the media, tell our story and elevate the community needs from Houston to Waco. To funders, consider supporting our work. There are multiple shovel-ready opportunities for funding. Actually, I like how Matt said it better. Dirt in the ground ready opportunities for funding. We are ready. We were moving and we were unceremoniously pulled back. Those projects need funding in part, in whole, and there are even more shovel-ready projects than those you heard from today. In the chat, I am going to put a link to a list of all of those community change grant programs so you can access programs across the state and across the country. There we go. To our community members joining us today, continue to advocate for your health. Speak up for environmental and climate justice concerns. Attend meetings, write comments, call your elected officials, and join us and our partners. To that end, I am putting two more important links in the chat right now. A link where you can find out who represents you in the state of Texas, who are your elected officials, and a link so you can join us at Air Alliance Houston as we continue to advocate for everyone's right to breathe clean air. Again, thank you for joining us today and for helping to tell our story. We do have a few minutes for questions if folks would like to stay on the call. Again, all of our speakers are available for interviews today. And my last note in the chat is once again adding our media contact for today's press conference. Thank you. If you have to leave, we wish you a wonderful rest of your week. For anyone who has questions, all of the speakers are going to wait and we will answer those questions here. And again, we are available after this call to do interviews. Thank you all for joining us.
Hey, Jennifer, this is Dominic with Houston Public Media.
Hi, Dominic. How are you?
I'm good. Appreciate y'all taking questions. The City of Houston's health department also faces $62 million in cuts. Was kind of hoping to hear your reaction to the overall picture for Houston when it comes to the overall loss of funding.
Yes, as I mentioned, there are more projects that are facing termination than those you heard from today. The project we focused on is the project, of course, that Air Alliance Houston received and the partners working on that project. You heard from Dr. Cook that there are many other projects taking place across the state, including as far away as Waco, the Rio Grande Valley, and other projects here in the Houston area that were not on this call today. Yes, unfortunately, our partners at the Houston Health Department have also been the focus of these cuts, and their work uniquely focused in a very underserved and pollution overburdened community of Kashmir Gardens and the Greater Fifth Ward, a community that Air Alliance Houston also works in. I think my reaction to the fact that there are multiple projects that are being terminated, that are all working in communities of great need with historical pollution overburden, is to recognize that these are long-standing historical needs in communities that have been here, that don't have the resources dedicated to address them sufficiently. And this funding opportunity, which was congressionally approved, this was passed through legislation, rigorously vetted, as Dr. Cook mentioned, all of the work that went into these projects, we were rigorously vetted to apply for these funds and selected. It was competitive. We are all compliant with the expectations of managing federal dollars, which are sacred dollars. They are taxpayer dollars, and we accept that higher level of rigor and compliance. Finally, there were funds allocated to communities in greatest need with historical overburden from pollution to make significant and monumental change. These weren't small grants here and there for just 6 months or a year. These were major investments, as you noted, of millions of dollars to make significant change over a period of time so that real work could be made and real lasting capacity could be advanced in communities that have needed this work for a very long time. Big picture, the need is not going away. In fact, the need will increase because of this lack of capacity and the revocation of investment that all of these community organizations worked hard for with their community, in partnership with their community. This will make air, water, and soil pollution worse. This will make our communities have less capacity, even in the moment where they have more need. And I welcome other speakers. If you would also like to add to that question, please do.
And I'll share. Like this is the point. And I especially, having Houston Public Media there, Houston has some of the best city partners of any city in the United States. These are folks that understand exactly what Jen was saying. These are folks that understand the magnitude of the challenge facing communities in Houston, from repeated climate disasters, from generations of Houstonians growing up with abysmal air quality, right? Having the challenges of not just the macro air quality stuff, because you have the largest petrochemical complex in the Western Hemisphere on your eastern side, but you have, as we heard here, you have just a proliferation of other sources in and around communities like concrete crushers and asphalt plants. I mean, communities in Houston are under siege by environmental pollution. And these sorts of funding are critical, doesn't even begin to capture the importance of this funding for folks like those champions that communities have in the city of Houston to work with them to try to find solutions to these pollution problems. It is essential to support cities in doing their jobs and having honest to goodness relationships with communities and community nonprofits to come up with solutions. And these cuts that will absolutely decimate the ability of local government to do its job, will absolutely decimate the ability of communities to advance their own agendas for a better future, is the point, right? That's why they can't come up with an actual justification for cutting these grants, because there isn't a good one. It is to stop people from actually limiting pollution in this country, because the polluters don't want to be limited, right? This is the agenda of these polluting facilities, and it is being manifest in a way that we've never experienced in the United States before, to this extent of having local government, thrown out of their jobs by the federal government when all they're trying to do is make people healthier, right? They're trying to protect people from things that we know give children asthma and will result in cancers 20 and 30 years from now, that decimate their ability to have full, productive, happy lives. And that is the point of these grants and these funds being frozen and being clawed back. It's to stop people from actually limiting the pollution and having better lives. It is a racist, bigoted agenda that is being pushed by every part of this administration.
I just want to jump in here and add one additional comment. Something that I think is really important to know here too is that taking away this funding erodes trust in government. So we have to, our organizations have to go to the community members that we work with and tell them all these projects that we had been working side by side with communities on are not happening because this funding is being taken away. And people are seeing other programs being taken away from them as well. So it is something that can continue to erode trust And I think I appreciate Jen's determination that this work is not going to stop. We're going to keep going. This project is going to keep going. We're going to find the ways that we need to do to accomplish our goals. But the taking away of this funding by the government erodes trust.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Stefania. Are there any other questions we can cover for folks before we start to wrap up? I'm keeping an eye on the time.
Hi, my name is Lizette. I have a question. You said like tomorrow was the last day to dispute it. What do you think the probabilities are of after you making the dispute, you getting those funds again?
I sure wish I had a crystal ball or was better able at making statistical predictions. For some of the reasons, so a lot of this is an unknown, but for many of the reasons that Matt illuminated, that we are in an unprecedented time of prioritization on those forces that are adding to environmental harm versus protecting from environmental harm. I worry that first of all, we will be waiting for quite a long time to know what happens in response to our rejection of these terminations. So there may be an extended period of time where we are in an unknown, we are waiting to know, and we are still looking for ways to make the work happen. And I do worry that even after going through those mechanisms, which are the remedies that are our right as an organization in a legally binding contract with the federal government that has been illegally broken, these are the remedies that are our right to pursue, that at the end of that pursuit of those remedies, we may be in no better place than we are today, except that we have had that much more time to share this story, to encourage people to respond, to encourage our philanthropic community partners to also lean in. And how wonderful that at the end of this process, we are going to fight for these funds. We are going to find ways to make this work happen. We are going to activate people to say that they deserve these dollars. They deserve these federal assistance grants. How wonderful at the end of that, if we are even more motivated, organized, and effective in pushing back on the very pollution that these illegal decisions have been made to allow to flourish. What if we are able to make that happen from just the power we are building in this moment? That would be the best outcome from this in many ways, even if the funding is never released. I see a note in the chat as well. There are many efforts outside of the individual actions that grantees can take in terms of responding to the cancellations. There are a number of lawsuits nationally, regionally that are also in progress that may also create some relief for those of us who have had our grants terminated. There are many in the process. Many are still moving through the process, and some of them have been very successful. What they tell us is this. They tell us that the law is on our side. The courts are agreeing with these wrongfully terminated grantees. And I think that is giving everyone hope and giving the community hope. I see Rebecca's hand is up. Go.
Hey, I'm Rebecca Ward from the Houston Chronicle. I am curious if you would speak, Jen, to the decision to speak out, I mean, without speaking for other groups, maybe if you could speak to the decision the airlines has made and partners have made to speak out about this and why we might not have heard of certain other grantees who've lost their grants.
Absolutely. So I think, again, I cannot speak for any grantee except for Air Alliance Houston, but from my conversations, from many group settings, all of us as grantees meet. We met yesterday. There's hundreds of us that are coming together to create a community of support, to share best practices. What I am hearing is a lot of fear. Fear because organizations may have multiple other federal assistance grants that they are managing. Fear that those grants could also then be taken away and they will be even less able to provide the essential vital health and human services and environmental health protective work that they are providing. Fear especially here in Texas, that our organizations, as organizations, could be targeted. Fear that our nonprofit status could be targeted. And I think organizations that are here today that you heard from may have some of those same fears, but at the same time, we know that silence is also one of the goals of these illegal terminations. Silence is also one of the goals of instilling fear. And as an advocacy organization founded in Matt's time and before, this is the time where organizations like ours are called to stand up and speak up for the community, and especially for people in those communities who feel that they cannot. And that's the reason why Air Alliance Houston and our partners have decided to speak up in this moment. I do want to lift up what's in the chat. This has been a busy week, I think, because of the deadlines that are upon us. There was a national town hall yesterday where other groups from other parts of the country who are also speaking up and raising these issues discussed their experiences and their projects. And Matt put a link to that town hall and the password in the chat. And thank you, Anna, for also noting, yes, there are so many communities under attack in this moment, and so many community-based organizations filling in additional roles, doing that work without the sufficient funding and capacity. You heard from our partner in Corpus Christi, Rhiannon, how much they had to scale back because of the loss of funds, and at the same time still try to meet that community need. I want to say just a brief note of thanks as we wrap up. It is 11:01. We are going to end today's call in honor of people's time. There will be a recording of this press conference available after the fact. I also want to acknowledge and thank all of our partners who have taken time today to speak up, to share their stories, to Juliana and Jessica for sharing their activation stories as community members impacted by these decisions. I hope you are all inspired to do what you can, not only to tell the story or to support the work, but to get engaged. Again, this is the moment. We are who we are waiting for in this moment. We know it's not going to come from the federal government anymore. We know it's not going to come from industry. We are who we are waiting for to push back on pollution and to protect our community from environmental and climate harms. We believe everyone has the right to breathe clean air, and we hope you will join us. Thank you again for being here today. Please reach out to our media contact. Again, we are all available for interviews after this press conference. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful rest of your week.